The Italian Radio Hour is sponsored by Istituto Mondo Italiano.
Good evening and welcome to the Italian Radio Hour. Io sono Stefano.
E io sono Viviana. Come stai stasera, Stefano?
Sono stanco. The whole 1 hour time change, I'm still tired.
Oh, really?
Tu, come stai?
Benissimo, benissimo. Nothing that a little bit of espresso can fix.
I thought that, but anyways.
You know me.
I know. Well, anyways, again, we have another episode tonight. As always, we'd like to welcome back our regular listeners. And always, we welcome any new listeners. And we got folks listening online at khbradio.com, so we'd like to welcome you as well. And as always, please be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook at the Italian Radio Hour.
E benvenuti ai nostri ascoltatori da tutto il mondo. Grazie per essere con noi anche stasera, mentre continuiamo il nostro viaggio per l'Italia e la cultura italiana.
Okay, well, in our last episode, we had a kind of an interesting conversation with Lindsay and Alessandro, kind of learned a little more about the whole wine experience. And I thought it was just drinking a glass and enjoying it, but it's much deeper than little old me.
It's much deeper than that, indeed.
Again, as a friendly reminder to any of our listeners, if you like the intro music, Alla Buora, they're going to be coming here. They're going to be playing at Mondo Italiano this Saturday. There are a few tickets on sale, if I'm not mistaken, but they are expecting a full house. So please, if you enjoy the music, and I think you will, please go out to IstitutoMondoItaliano.org. Again, there's only 2 days left, and we are expecting a full house. So please get out there, a few more tickets, and let's really welcome this group in. Obviously, today is a big day for some folks. I believe it is St. Patrick's Day.
Indeed.
I've heard this somewhere. But ironically enough, although people think of this as kind of an Irish holiday, there is some connection between St. Patrick's Day and Italy.
Well, we're just going to keep it, the holiday being Irish. But for those of you who have not been to Orvieto in Umbria, they're in for a treat with the Pozzo di San Patrizio, the St. Patrick's Well, which was built by the architect and engineer Antonio da Sangallo, and it was built on the request of Pope Clement the Seventh, who had taken refuge at Orvieto during the sack of Rome in 1527 by the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, and he feared that the city's water supply would be insufficient in the event of siege. The name was indeed inspired by medieval legends that St. Patrick's Purgatory in Ireland gave access down to purgatory, indicating something really deep. But the uniqueness of this well, and it's visible, is that the ramps are built in a diagonal helix, which means that mules could carry both empty and full water vessels separately in a downward and upward direction without any obstructions. And it's really, really neat to visit. So anyone in the Orvieto area, please go and visit Il Pozzo di San Patrizio.
Interessante, and I appreciate that. But again, this is what brings us all together. It brings us as the phrase, as I jokingly say, that pays. So last week you said, non avere peli sulla lingua.
Let me check your tongue. Pull out your tongue. No hair on your tongue. So anyway, this is an idiomatic expression, and we actually put some pictures on Facebook, and it was the reaction was quite funny. But we use it when we speak frankly to the point of being blunt. Parlare chiaro e tondo, anche se dovessi sembrare scortese. So just speak your mind and call it as it is.
Interesting. And they call me abrasive when I do that. But as always, we do have people that are responding these days, and we really like that. We have a lot of people that, are kind of reaching out and saying, I think it's this, I think it's that. But obviously, only so many people can be right. So we want to thank Livia and Laura. And also, we had some respondents from Facebook. So I want to thank Daisy, Ron, and Father Daniele Vallacorsa from Rome.
Yes, he's well known in the Pittsburgh community. So, Padre Daniele, we read your answer as well.
Fantastic.
So, but before we bring our guests on, a little bit of pubblicità. Do you want to learn, improve, or master your Italian? Istituto Mondo Italiano can help. Located in the heart of Regent Square, Mondo Italiano offers small group classes and one-on-one private tutoring to help you learn Italian in no time. Visit us online at www.istitutomondoitaliano.org. Our spring semester starts on March 26. Hurry up and register. So, welcome back to our listeners. And typically, we have had stories of people migrating from Italy to the U.S. or other countries. But here tonight, we're going to bring a very special guest from Perth to London, back to Sydney, to Bolzano, and to Martina Franca. I'm very delighted to introduce Nikki Taylor, the owner of ItalyPropertyConsulting.com. Since 2014, I believe Nikki has realized her dream to move and live in Italy. And through her consulting business, she has helped hundreds of customers buying property in Italy wisely and intelligently, saving them also a lot of money and aggravation. So, Nikki, buonasera. Are you with us?
Buonasera. Thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be here. It's my first time ever being on a radio show, so it's a new experience.
Well, we are very happy to have you. And as I said, I mentioned a few, your hometown and a few of your moves. Can you give us a little bit of a background, a snapshot of your background and your desire eventually to move to Italy?
Okay, so I'm from a small town called Perth, which is the most isolated city in the world, in Australia. And, sorry, I've got a cold as well, so if I cough, I apologise. And in the year 2000, I moved over to London and spent 12 years living in London. And when I was living in Perth, I left Perth when I was 21 years old, so I was quite young, and I've never really travelled to Europe before. So when I moved to London, it was the ideal opportunity to come to Italy. It was a country that I've always wanted to come and visit. And I remember going to Florence and just being so in awe of the town and the city, and just looking at all the architecture and everything around me. And it was just so polar opposite to what I'd experienced living in Australia. And I was just so taken with Florence, and it really felt like I was home. And I do hear this a lot with my clients. Even clients that have not got Italian descent, they say that when they come to Italy, they feel there's this calling to them, and it feels like they've come home. And I remember saying to myself at the time, one day I'm going to live in Italy. And, I was 21 at the time. I stayed living in London for 12 years. I moved back to Australia in 2012. I stayed working within the investment banking industry. That was, my background is financial planning, investment banking. And I was living in Sydney. I had the most amazing Sydney Harbour Bridge apartment, great job, great social life, but something was missing for me. Like, I really felt like I needed more from my life. I didn't want to be stuck in the corporate world. I suffered burnout from too much work, and it was around about that time I had a bit of a line in the sand moment. Where do I see myself for the next 5 years? Do I want to be living here, working my fingers to the bone 12 hours a day? Or do I want to, actually live a life? And I wanted to find the love of my life as well, because, I was 34 at the time, single. I wanted to have a family. And it was almost like one day I just decided to move to Italy. And because I have a UK passport, there was no issues from the visa side of things. I could enter the country very easily. However, I didn't speak any Italian, and I had no idea what I was going to do for work. Excuse me. I had no idea what I was going to do for work, but that didn't deter me. I made this 12-month plan and decided to move, to Italy. And I learned very basic Italian. And then in 2014, in December, I sold pretty much everything I owned and moved to a town called Bolzano, which is in the far northeast of Italy, near the Austrian border. And I stayed there for about 3 years. And pretty much as soon as I arrived, bear in mind, I had no idea what I was going to do for work. I had offers at Deutsche Bank in Milan. So I used to work for Deutsche Bank in Australia and London. Deutsche Bank in Milan offered me jobs, but I didn't want to live in Milan. I didn't want to live in a big city. And I came across this kind of a billboard for, and it was written in English. So anything that was always
it's
written
like,
in English,
hey, I can understand that.
Because, in Bolzano, they speak German and Italian, and I didn't speak either of those. So I was like, oh, wow, and I see something in English. I was like, yay, I can understand something. And they were looking for someone to work in the real estate, for a real estate company called Engel & Volkers, which is a luxury global real estate company. So I applied for the job. I'm just going to have some water. I applied for the job. They obviously gave me the job because I needed someone that could speak English, and I was probably the only mother tongue English speaker in that town. And that's where my real estate kind of career started. And I was dealing with all the clients that didn't speak Italian or German, and, you know, just kind of advising them on buying property in Italy. And around about 2017, around about March, I started to really, really miss the beach. Like growing up in Australia, I grew up by the beach. And my Italian teacher in Sydney was from Putignano in Puglia. And it was funny because when we did the Italian lessons in Sydney, she said where she was from, and she says Puglia, and everybody in the room was like looking around going, huh, where's that? Like no one had heard of Puglia. And it's funny now because everybody knows about Puglia. But I remember saying to her, I'm torn where to move to. Should I move to Sicily? Should I move to Calabria? Should I move to Puglia? And she said, you must come down to Puglia and you must check out a town called Monopoli. And I went down to Puglia, I went to Monopoli, and I literally felt, I had these goosebumps on my arms, I had tears in my eyes walking through the old town, and I was like, oh my God, I've found my home. And I felt such a massively strong connection to Puglia. And now we live in Martina Franca, and, you know, Puglia has always had a really big impact on me. So when I was living in Monopoli, same sort of thing. I was out walking my dog and I saw this sign in English for a company, and I just walked inside and I asked them, you know, what is the company that you have? What do you do? And they said, oh, we're a real estate and holiday rentals company. I said, oh, well, I've got experience in that. And they said, we need someone that speaks English that can deal with our overseas clients. So they gave me the job. And that's kind of where my business started, because they were paying me 400 euros a month in the south of Italy. And it was all very nice, you know, living by the beach, but, you know, 400 euros a month.
Money was
not
tight.
Really going to be able to survive financially. And I started to see a pattern forming with these inquiries from clients. Like they were very excited and really wanted to buy property in Italy, but they were also very cautious because of reading all the horror stories, hearing about unethical estate agents, hearing about how you can lose your money in property deals, hearing about buying properties that are illegal. So I really saw a gap in the market, and that was what led me to create the first course in the country and the industry on buying property in Italy. And that is kind of where my business started, and it's just sort of flourished from there, really.
Yes, because also what happens is that there are these people romanticize about owning property in Italy, thanks also to the many movies and the literature. And buying property in any country requires due diligence. So you bring this unique combination of skills from finance and banking. Also, you're fluent in Italian, and you have picked up quite cute colloquialisms, as we talked before. Also, you are the one that, whenever, as I said, you might, I like that you have this type of exercise that you guide your clients through, because they might come to you and say, I want to buy a property on the Amalfi Coast. And do they really mean what that, do they really know what that means? And are there alternatives? So can you walk us through the process that you would take your clients to actually identify maybe the best place for them to live in and set up? Because it might not be the Amalfi Coast, but it might be still something equally beautiful somewhere else. So can you guide us a little bit through your process of guiding your clients?
That's a really great question, because there are many, and I don't want to toot my own horn here, but there are many English-speaking people that work in the real estate industry in Italy, but they don't have a financial planning and investment banking background. And that is where I feel like I've really been lucky to have these skills from my past career that I can bring into my current work, because I'm a big believer in fact-finding. When I take on a new client, we have a very in-depth strategy session, and I want to hear absolutely everything about their dream, because you're absolutely right. What they're thinking, oh, I want to live on the Amalfi, but hey, you know, it might not be financially viable. There could be a lot of issues with what you want to do there, et cetera, et cetera. And I will really leave no kind of stone unturned as to the possibilities. And sometimes, clients, they don't know where to buy. So I kind of go through this kind of exercise with them to visualize what does your perfect day look like in Italy? Like, are you by the beach? Are you in Tuscany? Are you in a busy town? Are you in the mountains? Are you walking down the cobbled streets of an old town? And it gets them to kind of dream and visualize. And when you talk about buying property in Italy, people think it's like a film. It's definitely, that is the highlights reel. Definitely a Hollywood highlights reel. What the reality is so different. But, I guess my work is really I try very much to shield my clients from the bureaucracy and the things that can go wrong. However, there are times, obviously, that I have to say, look, this has happened, blah, blah, blah. But I want people to feel that it's achievable. So one of my mottos that I say in pretty much all of my marketing is in my website, in the posts that I write, is let's turn your dream into an achievable reality. Because so many people, Italy is a dreamy place and it attracts a lot of dreamers. But there is a big difference between having the dream and actually having the reality, and it's taking action. And fear is the thing that stops people taking action. Fear of the unknown, fear of trusting the right people, fear of not knowing what steps to take first. And that is pretty much what I do, is I take that fear and I turn it into joy and excitement, because it really can be very, very exciting. And when you're there with clients and you're giving them the keys, and like this happened very recently, I went to see a client who bought a place in Puglia. And they, had the Prosecco waiting for me. They had the pasticciotto waiting for me. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. And they said that they're standing there with tears rolling down their eyes. They're from California. And they said, you made this happen for us. You made our dream possible. This is all because of you. And that, for me, I started crying. We're all like standing there crying at 9 o'clock in the morning with glasses of Prosecco, because it was just so emotional. Because it's just such a beautiful feeling being able to facilitate someone's dream like that.
Nikki, let me ask you, are these folks that are coming out to buy this property, are these folks, are they all ages, or are these mostly kind of people later on, or thinking, hey, I'm ready to retire, or I just want to kind of settle down? And what kind of folks are these that are looking to buy, like seriously looking and actually going through the process of buying property in Italy?
I deal with clients mainly from around my age. So I'm 42, and the majority of my clients are Americans, and about 50% have Italian descent. And initially, they're looking for a place to have a second home, holiday home, where they can rent it out. They can earn some money. That money that they earn from the rental, pays for their own holidays to Italy. And then with the viewpoint to them wanting to retire here when they're in retirement age. Or there is the clients that are pretty much, they've had enough of the corporate world. They're a couple of years away from retirement, and they're wanting to move over here permanently. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
So another thing that I know that you do, again, when we talk about proposing alternatives, you have a newsletter that you feature certain properties also in locations that people might not be familiar with, and that's also some education that you're providing. Where are you taking that kind of information? What is the next level? What is that you have just launched that would make feel any buyer a little more comfortable and follow certain recommendations? You also do cost analysis, living in certain places. So I really feel that it's indeed a 360-degree hand-holding solution process. So tell us a little bit about La Dolce Vita magazine.
Okay, so La Dolce Vita Lifestyle magazine was actually an idea that I derived 2 years ago when we first went into lockdown, because my clients couldn't travel and there were some incredible bargains on the internet, property bargains. So I wanted to kind of keep the inspiration and the Italian dream alive, and I started a newsletter that was sending out properties every single week to people's inboxes. And that's evolved now into a magazine, and I've relaunched it last week actually. where there is not just properties on there, properties that I've kind of chosen myself, and I don't choose just properties just because of the price, because I don't think that cheap represents value a lot of the time. I really go through, my experience of, what makes a solid holiday rental, and I've got a special strategy involved in that, and I handpick the properties every single week. But not only, is there properties in the magazine, there's articles on living in Italy, there's articles on travel, there's articles on cooking, there's articles on language, and that's the magazine element. However, there's also a VIP members platform that if you subscribe, and it's only $11.11 a month, so it's really, really accessible for everybody. You can unlock, some incredible discounts on all things Italy related, because what's really happened in Italy is the economy was really, really hit, and the tourism industry really, really hit with COVID. So I wanted to kind of give some, Italian businesses a boost. So in the platform, there is discounts on Italian tours, learning Italian, cooking lessons. There's a discount on a holiday rental, and there's going to be lots more things coming up. Just created a partnership with this incredible Canadian-Italian stylist who teaches people how to dress when they come to Italy. Because that's something, the question I get quite a lot. What do I wear when I come to Italy? I don't want to look like a tourist. And so she's going to be offering some workshops. So it's a real kind of 360-degree insight into La Dolce Vita. And it's just, my vision for this magazine is to really make it accessible for everybody. I've just inserted a segment called the 50K Club, which is an extra 10 properties on the other 50, 10 properties under 50,000 that are all turnkey, habitable, and ready to earn an income.
Mm-hmm. And also I found very useful, you have published many articles, also Italy for remote workers, or, also the new hotspots to buy property in Italy, because people might think of villas, but shout out to Puglia and its beautiful masserias. And I'm sure, there's also the dream of owning a truly. And another thing is that sometimes some properties might need remodeling. So knowing exactly what you're getting is the first step to save money, because you might just sign on a contract without having done the fact-checking, the due diligence. For instance, if there is a pool, was that pool kind of built, so to speak, or was he officially in the deed and so forth? So my understanding, again, that you, Nikki, don't leave anything unchecked. Is that correct?
No, absolutely. I think this is where my financial planning background comes in, because I'm a real big believer in risk mitigation. And I strongly advise all my clients to get a legal due diligence done when they buy a property, and also structural, because many properties, and especially in the South, the owners, they do these renovations to the properties. They take off a door here, they add a window there, they might add on a veranda, they might decide to add on an extra room, they might decide to put in a pool, and they don't think about doing something very, very important, which is actually checking whether this is possible by the local council and getting the right permissions. So what happens is then when people go to buy these properties, if they don't get what we call a geometer, which is the surveyor, if they don't get the geometer to go and check the planimetry, which is the floor plan, and they match it up to the floor plans in the archives in the comune, if there's a discrepancy there, because something has been altered to the property. But if you don't do those checks, when you buy that property, you are liable for all the mistakes that the previous owner made. Mm-hmm. But also, you might have to undo. You're liable to pay the fines of, rectifying these problems. Also, you might have to pull down things. So if you've extended your property illegally, you'd be buying a property, you're thinking that I'm buying a property that's 200 square meters, when in effect, 100 square meters of that is legally habitable space. It's to tear down 100 square meters of your property, which is really bad. And this happens quite a lot in the South. In Puglia, I see this quite often, where you have these old villas, And downstairs is like a garage. We call it a depositor. And what they've done is they've created bedrooms. They've made them into bedrooms, which is not legal habitable space. So if you want to Airbnb your property, you must have everything regulated. So you need to be really careful that you're not buying a property thinking that, oh, I'm buying a 3-bedroom property, when in fact one of those bedrooms is legal and the other 2 aren't.
So just very quickly, we have 60 seconds before moving on to the next segment. There been a case that was like the ideal case both for the client and yourself, and the timelines, everything, all the ducks, lined up perfectly, all the stars lined up. Is there a case that you would like to share with us?
That does happen, rarely. And when it does happen, I literally jump for joy because it is quite rare. But when you have the right team, you can, mitigate things. And a lot of the time, things can look like it's a big deal, but, you can get them rectified. But I'm just dealing with a client at the moment who's bought a place in Monopoly. It's all been very smooth. Everything's, smooth sailing. And she's going to be closing in less than 60 days. So, there are some very good good case studies out there as well.
And then
but I do recommend to get independent advice.
Yes. And also, you had launched during the holidays, I think it finished on February the 15th, a context where you actually awarded a house in Ostuni, and people had to send in handwritten almost like love notes to Italy, what Italy meant to them. So I believe there is one winner, Lara Patane or Patane, she's an Australian, I think in June will join you in Ostuni, where you will be able to give the keys to them.
Yeah. I'm really excited to meet her and hand the keys over to her. So that's all very exciting.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It is very late for you, so I'm going to let you go. And I would like to remind our listeners that Nikki Taylor is indeed there for you in the process of helping you, assisting you in buying your dream property in Italy. You can visit italy-propertyconsulting.com. Buonanotte e ci vediamo in Puglia.
Grazie.
Okay, so this was very informative. As I said, many of us might have dreamed of moving back to Italy as expats, or also people buying their first home, and having knowledge on to count on is indeed valuable. Before we introduce our second guest, as usual, a little pubblicità. Applying for dual citizenship? Need documents translated? Istituto Mondo Italiano provides certified translations and interpretation services in 20 different languages. Be sure to visit us at istitutomondoitaliano.org.
Don't delay in getting that plumbing repair done. Call Palucci Plumbing today for all of your plumbing needs. From trenchless sewer repair and waterline repairs and replacement, hot water tanks, sewer camera inspections to Pittsburgh potty repairs. No job is too small for Palucci Plumbing. Owners Amy and Nick Palucci have been in business for over 20 years. So give them a call for your next plumbing repair or replacement. That's Palucci Plumbing, 412-782-5050. That's 412-782-5050.
Okay, so we're ready for our second segment. This is a guest also that we've been waiting to talk to for quite some time, because we touched upon citizenship before, but having the information firsthand from the source is exactly what we and our listeners are looking for. So I'm very delighted to introduce Roberto Giantomassi, Citizenship Official from the Consulate of Philadelphia. Benvenuto Roberto, buonasera.
Ciao Viviana, ciao Stefano.
Ciao Roberto.
Buonasera a tutti.
Benissimo, diamoci del tu. Let's drop the formalities. Maybe at the consulate we'll keep the lay form, but here on the radio. Roberto, can you tell us a little bit about yourself first before we dive into the official conversation? Where are you from, how long you've been in the U.S., and how you got to the position you hold?
Of course, sure. So hello everyone. Thank you for having me. I was born and raised in Castelfidardo, which is a beautiful medieval city located in the middle of the East Coast in Italy. It's actually in the Marche region. I began visiting the U.S. when I was a teenager because I had a relative who moved to Philadelphia during the 50s. He owned a well-known music retail business, so I would come over for the summer vacation and to stay with him. And right away I felt a great connection with the U.S. and Philadelphia in general. Then in 2008 I decided to move permanently. I loved working in the music business, but then it was time for a career switch. So I started to think about public service. And in 2015, I was able to secure my position with the Italian Consulate. Since then, for me, it's been a great experience being able to help in this regard. I received so much gratitude from, the whole community through the years, and I really appreciate, the honor and the duty of being part of, the Italian citizenship acquisition process.
Okay, very good. So when we talk about citizenship, there are a couple of different routes that people might be eligible for. Can we please talk about citizenship through bloodline, and then eventually we can move on to citizenship through marriage?
Sure. So, in the U.S. there are a lot of Italian immigrants that came, through the centuries. So obviously, citizenship by blood is it's a big it's a big argument here. There are so many people that are eligible to apply. It starts from really the person that moved from Italy to the U.S. first, and then we pretty much build the bloodline down to the applicant. Beside that, the other category, as you mentioned, is mostly citizenship by marriage. So anybody who is married to an Italian citizen, obviously is eligible to apply, even though it's a completely different, procedure compared to citizenship by blood.
Okay, so let's get into, so to speak, the actual nitty-gritty. What do people, let's do again, back to the bloodline. What are the steps that an applicant has to follow, the documents that need to gather? So let's have that checklist in place so we can hear it firsthand.
Sure. So first of all, the birth certificate of the Italian immigrant that came to the U.S. is the first document that, an applicant will acquire and has to be acquired by the Italian township where that person came from. And then from him, to build a bloodline, we just need to pretty much to verify every single vital record. When I say vital records, I mean, birth certificate, marriage certificate, death certificate if applicable, anything that will help us to determine that, that's the family line. One of the focal points of the procedure is to establish when and if the Italian immigrant became an American citizen. If that happened before the first generation was born in the U.S., and unfortunately there is no eligibility for anybody down the line. If that person became an American citizen after the first generation was born here, or maybe in some cases, he never naturalized American, and then there is eligibility for anybody else.
Fantastic. Roberto, I got a question. First of all, I have a funny comment.
Sure.
So the guest we had on before talked about Americans want to go to Italy to buy homes, and you kind of said, I came to Philadelphia and I really liked it. I just think it's funny that everybody in America goes to Italy and they love it and they want to go back to Italy. And everybody in Italy comes to America and they love it and they want to come to America. So I just think that's funny.
Yeah.
Because I personally will vouch that you have been extremely helpful. For the folks that might be listening, there might be one or two that know I may have recently acquired my cittadinanza. So again, thank you very much, Roberto. But I guess the question a lot of folks would want to know is, okay, what would be the advantage of getting my citizenship? Why would I want to do this in the first place?
So for my own experience, I would say that most of the people that applied for citizenship by descent, a big part of the people at least, it's just to reconnect with the Italian relative that moved here first. It's just that feeling of, linking back to, whoever in your family came from Italy. And in the other hand, I think it's a good way, a good option that Italian citizenship will give you is that, you always have a door open if you want to move to Italy or anywhere in the EU by having, Italian passport. It's always easier, if you want to maybe retire there, if you want to spend a longer period of time, that will definitely facilitate, that matter.
Okay, so we were talking about, the application process. So after the collection of these documents, and another thing also that people are looking into is whether they can apply through the male lineage or the female lineage. Can we talk about that case, please?
Sure. So if there is an Italian citizen, a woman in the bloodline, it's very important that the generation who comes after her is born, after January 1st of 1948. If that requirement is not met, unfortunately, there is in the Italian law that regulates citizenship. It doesn't allow, anybody who's born from a female, from an Italian citizen female, to have the right to citizenship if the generation after the woman is born before 1948.
Okay, and and we talked about a little bit, this might not be something that a lot of people are familiar with. If you are indeed falling under this category, there is actually a way of, so to speak, fighting these circumstance, but that has to be handled through the court system in Italy by indicating that this would be an unfair kind of a discriminative regulation. Do you know of any cases that have successfully managed to? We know that the process also with the court in Italy can be quite lengthy, but that's something that you people could potentially do. Is that correct?
Yes. So because through the years the increasing number of citizenship applications. Obviously, there are more and more cases where even though if, an applicant falls within that specific, exception, cannot, submit the request directly to the consulate by going through, the Italian court, since, that law that establishes that it was considered, unconstitutional or, discriminatory towards women, they can follow that path. And, in many cases, the court will reverse, the case, and at that point, they will be able to become Italian.
Okay, thank you for clarifying this, because, again, it might not be a well-known fact, and as I said, it might require getting on a plane and stay in Italy for some time to get that handled, because only the courts in Italy can decide that. So don't ask the consulate in Philadelphia to do anything they can't. Other situation, getting citizenship, being eligible through marriage. Can you tell us first of all how long the couple must be married before the spouse can apply, and what information would he or she have to bring to the consulate?
Sure. So the requirement in terms of time is 3 years. So the couple has to be been married for 3 years before before applying. This procedure is different than the other one, of course. It's handled mostly by the Italian Ministry of the Interior in Italy, in Rome. There is an online portal where the applicant will upload the documentation. This documentation includes birth certificate, background check for every single state and country that the applicant lived in, a language certification. This is something new that was introduced just a few years ago. So they have to show that they can speak Italian through this specific certificate.
And I have, sorry to plug in, Istituto Mondo Italiano being the center in the Pittsburgh area, being the certified center for the administration of the CILS exam, Conoscenza dell'Italiano come lingua straniera. So if anyone is at that point, we'll be more than happy to help them. One question when you talked about the backgrounds, is it maybe in the last 10 years or any place that the individual has lived? Because that's a question we get asked all the time.
Yes, it used to be, from the 14th year of age. Now it's considered to be since, birth.
Okay.
So it has to be submitted for any single, country or state since the applicant lived in, since birth. Yes.
So we said the language certification. Another, obviously, the marriage, and we got a few questions also from our listeners. We solicited some questions so that we could be prepared. Let's assume the couple has been married, I don't know, even 10 years in the U.S. So Italian citizen, American citizen got married in the U.S. Mm-hmm. The marriage has not been recorded in Italy yet. Can the spouse still start the dual citizenship process, or do they have to record the marriage first, and then once that is recorded, he or she can proceed with the dual citizenship application?
Yes. So the marriage must be recorded first, and must be recorded from the Italian spouse through the the Italian township. And one of the documents required to be uploaded into this portal is actually the marriage, registration from Italy. So it cannot be done until, the marriage documentation is being recorded.
Okay, so often we have multiple people from the same household wanted to apply. Should they book separate appointments? Do you have one appointment where the whole family shows up? Can they share the paperwork and the translations that have been provided? How does it, what works best for the consulate so that we can set them up for success?
Sure. So every consulate has a little bit different regulation on appointments. In Philadelphia, we used to accept up to 2 family members. So if there is already an application submitted with some documents that are already relevant to a family member, obviously it can be used in the new application. So there is no need of resubmitting everything from the beginning if some documentation is already present in one of the files within the same consulate. Obviously, if we're talking about different consulates, and it's a different story.
That's a good question, or kind of brings up something. The paperwork is kept at the consulate, or does it go back to Italy?
The actual, paper version is kept within the file of the person. In Italy, we just record electronically.
Okay.
Nothing is sent physically in Italy.
Okay, and then kind of with that being said, then, so when you get it through through descendants. So, for example, let's say I got my citizenship, okay, and I claimed it through my great-grandfather. Now, let's just say my brother or sister wants to say, I want to become an Italian citizen. They don't have to go through the whole lineage process. That's already recorded. Because I think a lot of people say, well, if I get it, does everybody in my family have to do the same paperwork, or no?
So, as I said before, yes, you're right. If something has been already submitted by a family member, all the documents down to that person, they do not have to be, presented again. They can be used for any other family member, as long as, the applicant is within the same, consular jurisdiction. Right. If, the documents are shared or they are submitted, among different consulates, and then the stories, it could be a little different. But if it's within the same consulate, there is no need of resubmitting everything from the beginning.
Now, obviously, a lot of folks are going to go through a lot. And for people listening, this is not something you do in 2 weeks. this could take years to get all of the paperwork together, to go back to Italy, to get the translations, to get the apostilles, to get everything. And then you have to make the appointment with the consulate. So you're going to put a lot of time and money into this. Let's be very honest. With that being said, Roberto, what are some easy like mistakes they can, don't do this, avoid this mistake, so they can speed the process up?
Sure. So I would say that many times, sometimes at least, people will try to use translators that are not really professional. So after we receive everything, there could be, some mistakes or translation are not correct. So that will delay a lot, the procedure. So that's one of the things one of the mistakes that will, some applicants will make. Some people might not read the instruction very well. They might not know what an apostille is. So they would just, submit a document without an apostille that cannot be used in Italy. So also that will, delay the process. So apostilles and translations, I think, are those steps that will make applicants, confused sometimes.
Okay. Now, obviously, the situation, that the COVID, the pandemic, has created, has impacted also the operations in any organization and government office. So we could say that in ideal scenario, maybe once the paperwork has been submitted, the turnaround could be about 2 years before hearing the status of the application. In an ideal situation, is that pretty much a good indication?
At the moment, I would say yes. In Philadelphia, that's the approximate waiting time for an application to be complete. Again, different consulates might have different backlogs or delays in different departments. So we used to be able to process it quicker than that, just within a few months. But now that's the average waiting time.
Yes, and now the hot potato question. There have been hundreds of people that had their appointments. The appointments, obviously, for safety reasons, that had to be canceled. They might be still in the waiting to hear back from about a new date. How do you see this process to pick up again? Because I don't know if you can actually schedule new appointments, but I'm sure that there is the backlog that needs to be addressed first. Any words of relief that you could give to those that have applied, had an appointment, that appointment has been canceled? What should they do?
Yeah. So I cannot disclose too much information on this, but I can definitely say that we are trying our best to accommodate those people so they will have some sort of priority in terms of appointments. I don't have a timeline yet, but we're working hard on it, and we'll have some decision made soon.
I just wanted people to, there was a question that they had asked me to ask you, and I know that you and everyone at the consulate are working really, really hard so that those appointments can be rescheduled over time. So don't lose hope. It's going to happen. Just let the consulate do their work. The problem is, and we discussed that, people might say, why doesn't the consulate hire people, to take care of the backlog? Maybe, Roberto, if you can take a minute to explain the process of being hired at the consulate is not something that can be done because there is the whole process of the concorsi. Would you like to share a little bit of that process so that people can have an understanding of why you can't just staff the consulate overnight with additional people? There are certain procedures in place.
I couldn't hear much what you say. The last, can you say that again, Viviana?
Yes. So some people say, well, if there is so much work, why don't you bring more people to the consulate? And we know that to work in the consulate, there is a specific ITER, the concorsi and so forth. Would you mind sharing for a minute or so what is the process that the consulate must use to bring on board additional individuals?
Sure. So obviously, as a government, agency, we can't just hire, based on, on I would say American standard. We can just pick people and have, hire, the way we like. So as happens, in Italy for public service, pretty much the only way to work in an agency is through a concorso, which pretty much is a public examination. So once in a while, when we have authorization from the Italian ministry, we were able to begin this process to hire somebody. That happens rarely, unfortunately. I wish it could be more often, but it's pretty much the only way to to secure a position with the consulate or with any Italian government agency.
Okay, Roberto, I just wanted to thank you so very much. It's not really typical to have someone from the consulate join a program, but our listeners, I'm sure, have been very appreciative of the information you have shared, and also to hear your voice and feel that there is a human. It's a very understanding person that works really, really hard. And we had also someone whose name is Sean. I'll share the last name afterwards, but he said that Roberto rocks, so I wanted to pass also those compliments. We know that you're working really, really hard. And also the consulate is after our interests, so they're there to help us. And so I wanted to thank you, and grazie mille per quello che fai.
Thanks, Roberto. Appreciate it.
Thank you, both of you. And I hope I was helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Roberto, and I will be talking to you soon.
Ciao.
Sei connazionale now.
That's right. Ciao, ciao. Roberto.
Buona serata.
Okay, well, folks, looks like our hour is almost up.
I cannot believe, but I have to say, il Big Ben ha detto stop anche per questa sera.
So again, almost our time to say arrivederci and alla prossima. And again, we also want to thank you for listening. And as a reminder, if you want to come on the show, if you have a success story, or, if you want to talk about, your family's journey, or maybe you just want to sponsor an episode, again, please send us an email at theitalianradiohour@gmail.com. We do read your emails. We appreciate your emails, and as always, we'd love to hear from you. Viviana, before we leave, who will be our guest next week?
Actually, we're going to have a very wonderful conversation and a kind of a tour on Emilia-Romagna with Francine Siegen. She is one of the America's foremost experts on Italian cuisine. She's definitely an engaging public speaker, author, and TV personality.
All right, looking forward to that.
And as a reminder for any of you or your friends or family who might have missed any of our episodes or would like to re-listen to one of them again, you can visit us on the website istitutomondoitaliano.org. And we have also opened up our YouTube channel, so you can go on YouTube and find the Italian Radio Hour. Vorrei ringraziare I nostri ospiti, Roberto e Nikki, our sponsor Istituto Mondo Italiano, Paolo Ciplamin, a lavorare for the music, and Caterina in redazione. And finally, before we leave, here is our next trivia. Get ready, and what does it mean? Avere grilli per la testa. Again, what does it mean, avere grilli per la testa? Be the first to answer correctly by sending your answer to the Italian Radio Hour at gmail.com. Again, that's the Italian Radio Hour at gmail.com.
All right, vi ringraziamo per la risposta from last week's trivia. Again, we always enjoy reading your emails, so please keep them coming. If you are not in the Pittsburgh area or might be traveling, remember, you can catch us streaming live at khbradio.com every Thursday at 5 p.m. And be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook at the Italian Radio Hour. Until next time, alla prossima.
Ciao, ciao.
The Italian Radio Hour has been sponsored by Istituto Mondo Italiano.